All right, welcome everyone to the intro to Shem Ben. Intro to the SHEVA MITZVOT B'nai Noach. That's a mouthful, so Shem Ben is the mnemonic, Shem Ben. And this is class Beis. And class Beis, last week we did the introduction, or last class was the introduction. And this is the introduction to Aver Min Hachai. Aver Min Hachai, because we're going to go in the order of the mnemonic that we set up, right? Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, right? The 7. And every one of those corresponds to one of the SHEVA MITZVOT B'nai Noach, the one of Shem Ben. Aver Min Hachai starts with an Aleph. Okay? Birchas Hashem starts with a Beis, right? Gilui Arios starts with a Gimel, right? And then Dalet is the one that comes on the second part, that first letter of the second name, which is Shafichus Domim. It's a Dalet, okay, but it comes on the second name, and et cetera and so forth. Can you go ahead and just go ahead and refuah for the...
Refuah Shlema for David ben Miriam.
For David ben Miriam.
Needs our prayers immediately. And for Ari Sivi ben Sarah Frida.
Ari Sivi ben Sarah Frida for the refuah.
David ben...
We learn for the refuah. David ben Itasheva.
And
Daphna Ayelet Basleya. We're learning for the refuah of all of these neshamas.
Amen.
For the refuah, absolutely. Okay, so this is Aver Min Hachai, and then we're going to go in the order of the mnemonic that we set up. So what is Aver Min Hachai? Aver Min Hachai literally means a limb from the living, or a limb from a live animal. Usually it's translated as a limb. Sometimes it's translated as a limb torn from a live animal, or a limb from a live animal. It literally means a limb, aver, a limb, min, from, hachai, a living, something that's alive. And chaya is usually used in the Talmud to denote animals. Chayas.
Well, it's alive, it's torn, so yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, it's alive. So for life, right? Absolutely. Okay. So, just think about it for a second. What would be the motivation, in the first place, of wanting to take a limb from a living and start eating it while the animal is still alive? What would be the motivation for wanting to do something like that?
There's a delicacy in Florida. They call them rock crabs. They're very difficult to find, and so they grow them in farms, and they rip their claws off, and they eat the claws, and the claws grow back every year.
Yes, so you see, but actually crabs don't fall under the prohibition of Aver Min Hachai. It's only land mammals that you are chayav misa for Aver Min Hachai. You would get the death penalty for. So there's certain penalties for the averas, right? So for Aver Min Hachai, if you actually transgressed it with that land mammal, you would be you would get the death penalty. I can't. So much in the Hebrew in my head. Chayav misa means you're obligated to die, basically. Okay, you get the death penalty.
Is that a death penalty that by a Sanhedrin, or is that a death penalty by Hashem?
By Hashem. So, good question. Nowadays in the Golas here, we have no authority at all over the nations around us. We live under the laws of the land, right? Mm-hmm. So when I say that he would be that a B'nai Noach, if he committed this transgression, would suffer the death penalty at the hands of the court, it would only be if we were in Yerushalayim and we had complete control of the land, and we had the Sanhedrin set up again. We can't impose any death penalty now, obviously, over anyone. But the rabbis do say if there is a group of B'nai Noach, and they know that somehow this was being transgressed by one of their members, they should be punished. In other words, they should be like not welcomed, maybe. They wouldn't be not welcomed back until they change their ways, things like that. Okay, so a crab now, this falls under the category of tsares ba'alei chayim, where you're causing pain to an animal. Okay? So causing pain to an animal is forbidden, but it falls under Aver Minachai. Okay, so though if you cause pain to an animal, you're not chayiv to the death penalty.
Oh, so that's kind of like catch and release.
Actually, so fish don't fall under the category of Aver Minachai either.
Oh boy, I'm really striking out today.
See, like I said, and this is literal, only a land mammal,
Just think about a cow.
a
that you
cow,
take a piece of-
something that lives on the land that breathes air,
And you take a piece, you eat it
While it's still
the animal
alive.
is still alive.
Right. Oh, but I was thinking of the cruelty part.
Okay, now that's tsaras balechaim. That's called causing pain or causing
But
pain
that's
to an
not
animal.
part of the 7 laws of Noah.
It's an extension. It comes under Aver Minachai, and it would be not prohibited.
Okay.
It would not be permitted. So
Right.
breaking off, cracking off while the lobster's still alive causes suffering to the animal. It would not be permitted.
But don't those like collars that zap the dog when he barks, doesn't that cause pain?
This is tsaras balechaim. It's really not permitted unless you got like a psak din, if it was very, very necessary for the protection of someone, if it was like for human beings to gain a certain amount of benefit from it, only then would it be permitted.
Oh yeah,
For the
like
dog,
my
for the dog not to get killed, because if a dog,
It could be permitted in
for a
certain.
dog not to
for training.
kill a person.
Exactly.
That's what I'm saying.
Right, but there's other ways of doing that, like chaining it up. You know, they get a
Right.
zap. You know,
Well,
it's,
the zap is like for my sister. That's the backup plan.
that's the right.
Yeah, if
Right.
well,
If the
goes-
chain breaks,
if the chain breaks,
you get the zap.
you get the zapper out.
Was it for the dog?
Yeah, for this.
Is it
one
like a pit
particular
bull or
dog.
something?
It was an Akita.
Akita. Okay, so he was just a mean dog.
No, only if he didn't know you,
Well, yeah.
or if you were male.
So in other words, he was doing his job.
Right.
He
but
was
if
doing
you,
his job.
If he knew you or you were male, and even if you did know him, if you didn't bother, you could like jump on top of him.
Oh man. All right.
Yeah.
So we're looking at motivations, right? What could be some motivations for this for transgressing this mitzvah? So what about in ancient times? Because we're going to go back to before the Mabul, before the flood, and because before the flood, remember, there was no prohibition of Aver Minachai. Aver Minachai does not come into effect until Noach comes out of the ark, and then God gives the commandment of Aver Minachai for him and all of his generations afterwards.
But wait, I thought they were all vegetarians.
Okay, so you're right. They all were, but they all might not have been. You see, they were vegetarians, but they were a very, which we're going to talk about, very corrupt and evil people. Okay? So, the rabbis say that one of the laws is if one were to, and this comes from the Talmud, back at the days of the Talmud. Now, this isn't in the days of modern medicine. This is back in the days of the Talmud. That if someone were to open up an animal and remove a kidney, and then leave the kidney in the animal and sew them back up, and then come back later and kill the animal, kill it, if it was a non-Jew, okay? And a non-Jew could check any way they want. They can cut the throat, they can stab it, they can cut off the head. It doesn't matter. As long as the animal getting ahead is completely dead. It can't be trembling anymore. It can't be convulsing anymore. It has to be completely still. It has to be completely dead. Then, if they were to open it up and start to butcher this animal, that kidney would be forbidden to eat because its Aver Minachai was removed while the animal was alive. So my point of all this is that there was sophisticated surgical procedures at the time. Now, the rabbis say that they were a very, very special people. They were special in the sense that they had many gifts. Rabbi Ovadia says this. He quotes from the Talmud. He quotes from the Medrash or quotes from the Talmud. He quotes. It didn't say where he quoted it from. He says, during the times of before the Mabul, the people, they could plant once, and the earth would bear fruit for 40 years. And they wouldn't have to plant for 40 years. Now, you might say, well, wait a minute, wasn't the ground cursed and giving up thorns? Well, for one thing, that doesn't matter. Okay, it would bring up thorns, but you only have to plant one still. Secondly, that curse of the earth ended with Adam's death, and so there were several hundred years after that before the marvel. Okay, so they could plant once, and the earth would produce fruit for 40 years. Okay, that's a great gift that Hashem may give to the people of pre-marvel. Okay, he says also that they could travel throughout the world in moments. In some way, they were able to, if they wanted, somehow, I don't know, was it teleportation? I don't know. Did they have airplanes? I don't know. But it just says they are able to travel vast distances in very short amount of time. Like if they take a step and like everything would bend and space and time and matter would shift for them and they would like, boom. You know, kind of like it did for us. Remember it took 11 days for us to get, and we got there in 3 days, right? It's just this compression of space, I guess. Space and time. Okay, somehow. So that was one of their gifts. Another gift was they had very great strength. The rabbi says that they were able to uproot trees with bare hands, just uproot trees. Very, very strong. Very strong. Okay? Another thing it says is that the animals feared them. Now, this is one where we can have a question on. Because, like you said, the animals only ate grass. Right? That's what it says. They are vegetarians. The animals are vegetarians, and the people were supposed to be vegetarians. Okay? Why would the animals be afraid of them?
Because they were able to see the purity in the human being that is different from them, the different souls.
Respect, you're saying they were able to see and respect and reverence the human being. And that is true. That is why the rabbis say that is why if a person is being a human being, that an animal will naturally fear them. It won't attack. He won't be attacked. We have stories of rabbis who there was a lion in a city, and a rabbi came and went to it and walked it out of the city, right? And the lion didn't attack the rabbi because he was a human being. The lion only will attack an animal, and that's kind of what we're getting into, a nephesh against a nephesh. They chase you because they love you. Yeah, they just want you to pet them.
I know, but we're in
Okay, so let me show you what else, how special, when I say special again, this generation, they had great gifts, great intelligence, and great powers. Powers, they had like superhuman powers. He gives over a story, probably from the Medrash, where a woman gave birth. And she told the baby to cut the umbilical cord. She told the baby, cut the umbilical cord. And the baby looked around, it says, the baby looked around, and in that time, he encountered the Melech Hashedim, the king of the demons. He encountered the king of the demons, okay? Not just any Shindalad, the king of the Shindalads. And battled him. And it says the Melech of the Shindalads had stopped because of a certain time. So I don't know what that is, but we know that there are every hour is a certain time of the day for specific things. Specific things happen at certain times of the day. And for some reason, this king of the Shindalads was stopped there, okay? Now, then after this battle takes place, the king of the Shindalads says, you should thank your mother that I didn't kill the baby. Didn't kill him. And the child says, you should thank the mother that I cut the umbilical cord and not her. You should thank the mother that I cut the umbilical cord and she didn't cut the umbilical cord because I would have killed you.
the baby.
That's what the baby said to the king of the Shindalads. He says, you should thank the mother because she asked him to cut the umbilical cord, and he did. But he was saying, if the mother would have cut the umbilical cord, I would have killed you. Now let's take a moment to see what's going on here, okay? Let's just try to put into our minds a picture of this, okay? So you have a baby that's been born. Umbilical cord is connected to the placenta, whether in or out of the mother, right? The placenta. Now picture it in your mind. You have the baby connected on one side and the mother connected on the other, okay? You have this length of umbilical cord. The baby only has a certain reach, little arm, certain reach. He cut the umbilical cord. That means it would be very close to him, right? It would cut it very close to his body. right? You cut the umbilical cord. Now, if the mother would have cut the umbilical cord, it would have been close to her. And so if the baby cut the umbilical cord, that means there's a long length of it that goes still connected to the placenta or the mother. Now, if the mother would have cut the umbilical cord, she would have cut it close to her, and there would have been a long stretch of umbilical cord attached to the baby. Now, it doesn't say this. I'm just thinking through this and trying to see how the baby could have killed the king of the shade if his mother would have cut the umbilical cord. Now, if that, all we know is that there would be a long length of the umbilical cord available to the baby, attached to him, a long length of it. So what could the baby do to the king of the Shindalet with that umbilical cord? Because obviously it has something to do with the length of the umbilical cord that he would have had.
Wrapped it around his neck.
He could have choked him with the umbilical cord. Some power in birth in this time and in the umbilical cord, and this baby could have choked.
Oh, it's life in the umbilical cord.
And that's another point. Okay, you're bringing up your.
Right?
What do we get from the umbilical cord? Stem cells. Stem cells.
We did with the dead, right?
Right, we preserved them.
You see
That cure
the stem
from
cells?
Yes.
We did
Yeah.
that cure from cancer, from that's life like in thousands, like.
So, could it be that the Shin Dalet, that these stem cells, this life, this which gives the life to the human being and keeps the genetic code on track, could it be that it was this life in the umbilical cord, that if he would have struck the Shin Dalet with the umbilical cord, whipped him, lashed him, gave him makais, could have gave him 40 makais, right? Because we know there's 40 minus 1, lest a man die at 40, right? That's what the halacha is. So maybe he could have killed the Shin Dalet, the melech of the Shin Dalet, with lashes. I don't know. All we know is that this baby had some power. Not only over the Shin Dalets, he could not only see the Shin Dalets, he could not only battle the Shin Dalets, this newborn baby, but he could kill the king of the demons. Okay, that's the generation we're talking about here. Okay? So, what does Rabbi Ovadia say about this? He says that these people, they were what's called anochios. What is anochios? He literally says this generation was kafui toida. They were ingrates. They were ungrateful. Do you know what the word for ungrateful is in Hebrew? It's anochios. Anochios. What does the word anochi mean? I. So the word anochi, I. So the word for selfishness is anochios. Okay, isn't that interesting? So he says that this generation was extremely selfish. Extremely, extremely selfish. What would selfishness lead to? It would lead to what? Thievery and murder. That's what the model came for. Wow. Complete selfishness. And he says that they were kafui toida, meaning they didn't appreciate all of the gifts that God had given them, those which I had given over to you just a little while ago. The planting for, not having to plant for 40 years, of great strength, being able to travel, and who knows what else. We see from the baby, the newborn, who could kill the king of the demons with an umbilical cord. Okay, so we're talking, they did not appreciate all of these gifts. And so Rabbi Ovadia goes on to say that the generation of the Mabul has no Olam Abba, because in heaven there is no place for kafui toida. There is no place in heaven for ingrates, for ungratefulness. So it's very important to know that our conduct shouldn't be that mimics the generation of the Mabul, being kafui toida, not being appreciative. Not being appreciative. Okay. So
Just two things too. That if you're not appreciative, even if you have the greatest thing, exactly what you're saying, they had, but they were not appreciative.
Right.
So it doesn't matter how much you have if you don't appreciate
Ah.
it, right?
exactly.
Wow.
Rabbi Noach Weinberg of blessed memory said, what is happiness? What is the definition of happiness? Happiness means that you appreciate what you have. A happy person appreciates what he has. Who is an unhappy person? He is a person who tries to appreciate what he doesn't have. He wants something that he doesn't have. That's what generates unhappiness. Happiness is just taking pleasure in what you got and not wanting anything else. So what would be another, what would be a motivation for the generation of the Mabul? They would eat meat. Obviously, maybe they were killing animals, and the animals feared them. Okay, so they didn't have refrigerators, so maybe what they wanted to do, because I told you how powerful, how much technology they had in surgery. Maybe what they wanted to do, if they could make surgery, cut out a kidney, sew it back up, and the animal will be alive, and then later shect it, right? That means their surgical abilities were pretty high. Okay, we just went over how many gifts they had at the time of the Mabul. So maybe what they did is they wanted to remove a limb, sew it back up for meat preservation. Well, I'll take this part now, save the rest for later. I don't have a freezer or refrigerator, right? Maybe they wanted just to preserve the meat.
Like delicacies, you mean, right?
Right? What else would they do? Part of Avodah Zarah. We know that Avodah Zarah was becoming rampant, right? Idolatrous practices. Maybe that was one of the reasons why they would remove a limb from a live animal. What else? Hunting and immediate satisfaction. And this isn't just the Mabul anymore. This is just in general. Okay? This isn't just the generation of Mabul I'm talking about. Just in general. Hunting and immediate satisfaction. Immediate satisfaction. You kill an animal and you immediately want to eat out of it. We think that's crazy, but...
It exists.
Yeah, I know.
Well,
So,
the meat is fresher. It's still warm.
have you ever heard of something called... Boy, I wish I remember. When I was 16 years old, I worked at a very high ritzy place, and what they had was they would get raw ground beef, make a patty out of it, and they would make a little divot in the top and put a raw egg yolk on the top and serve it. It was. I wish I could remember what it was.
Tatar, something
Steak
like
tartare.
that. Steak tartare. yeah.
Steak tartare. That's what it is. Steak tartare. And that's nowadays eating raw hamburger with a raw egg on the top. Okay, so. It happens. So maybe they would want, but maybe there was a time there was starvation, right? They kill the animal finally and they're so hungry they just start eating. Okay? Maybe that was a motivation. And finally, just this plain pleasure of cruelty itself, wanting to cause pain to the animal. Tar balechaim, causing pain to an animal.
Yes, because hunting for food, you see in the movies that they have these big hunting groups that they will go to the places where the animals will go and they will go very early in the morning and
Right.
they will trap them.
Right,
and-
or cause to fall off the cliff or
right,
things
and
like that.
then bring them back to the tribe.
Right.
And then they will process some kind.
Right.
You don't see them. So it's a difference.
Right.
What I mean, if they really want it for eating purposes,
Versus entertainment.
Right.
Hunting for fun.
Hunting for fun.
trophies.
Yeah, and that is forbidden.
Yeah.
Hunting for fun is forbidden because it's tar balechaim. It's causing pain to an animal. And like I said, that's only permitted for very specific reasons. Okay. So let's look at these people at the time, because we're talking about Bnei Noach, right? Okay, we're talking about people growing up and trying to become at the level of Noach. Remember, drawing those lights close, bringing the lights of Ruach and Neshama to be karev, close lights, rather than being rachaik, far lights. Okay? So if these folks had this selfishness, if they were so selfish, why would they kill another animal in the first place? What would cause someone to kill another animal in the first place?
pleasure,
Pleasure. Okay?
pure,
Now,
pure pleasure.
pure pleasure, right? So, but what about killing a human being? We know that there was murder, and we know that there was thievery.
Oh, sure.
What would cause them to kill another human being? Selfishness. We're going to get to, it basically boils down to selfishness, right?
So what you're saying basically is that there's a reason that these SHEVA mitzvahs and Noach came about. If they would have been doing it already, then there wouldn't have been a reason.
There wouldn't. Exactly. The commandment came after because it had to stop. So it's this mitzvah of Aver Min Achai is extremely, extremely important. It's foundational, really, for Bnei Noach. Because, like you just said, Hashem had to put a stop to Aver Min Achai, which means he had to put a stop to Tzar Balechaim, cruelty to animals. Because To kill a human being means that you view him on the level of an animal. You will not kill another human being, but you will kill an animal. They were killing animals, they were causing pain to animals, they were hurting animals, and so they were getting so accustomed to hurting animals that it was nothing to take that nefesh of that human being. Because remember, we said that the nefesh of all the unclean animals and the nefesh of the souls of those of the mabul were the same. They got their vitality from the same place, the three klipa noiga. The three evil klipa. Whereas the clean animals got their vitality from the klipa noiga, and we know that later on the Jewish soul gets its vitality from klipa noiga. And it can go either way, good or evil. Let's go through the progression. First we have this nefesh built from the klipa, right? The three klipa, evil klipa. Then they progress to tsar balechayim, causing pain to animals, causing tsaras to them. Then we graduate to aver minachai, eating from the live animal, because we don't care if it's in pain, and we're just going to eat from the living animal. Okay, this is gluttony, isn't it? Selfishness. Okay, this is where the man is like an animal. If you will kill a human being, the man is like an animal to you. Okay, if a man is like an animal to you, and you're willing to kill him, for sure you're willing to steal from him. What is thievery? What does thievery cause a human being?
If you can take the life, why not to take the wallet?
Right, exactly. But what does it do? It causes pain to the person. It's sar balechayim, right? It thievery kind of connects to sar balechayim. If you steal from that guy, it's going to cause him pain. Right? So it's the insidious importance of this mitzvah. It's very important. Cruelty to animals results to cruelty to humans. Killing animals for pleasure, it finally graduates to thievery and murder of humans.
Okay. It shows how bad is the people who you have to tell them do not do this.
Yeah, God had to finally give this commandment to Noach to put a stop to tsar balechayim. Really, if you think about it, that's what comes before eating from a live animal, causing it pain.
Right.
You have to stop it at tsar balechayim. Pardon me?
So if they were mutilating animals, that was it. That's why it was easy for Noah's son to mutilate his father.
Okay, so you're talking about Canaan, cursed to be Canaan and Ham, right? We could talk about that, but at another time. Could talk about that. Thank you for that. But we can definitely talk about the details of that in another time, because we're talking about Bnei Noach, right? So that would definitely be something we could delve into. Okay, so what is this mitzvah of aver minachai? Let's go through the details. First of all, we said it's forbidden for a Bnei Noach to cause pain to an animal. It's forbidden. Okay? But if they do cause pain to an animal, they're not chayav misa. Okay? They're not necessarily going to be put to death for that. They might get lashes. We're talking about if we are in Yerushalayim, if we control the whole nation, we have a Sanhedrin, and someone happens to cause pain to an animal, he would get lashed, but he wouldn't get the death penalty. If he was actually guilty of eating aver minachai, a limb from a live animal, then he would be put to death by the court. Okay? So if a Bnei Noach, slaughters the animal, okay, I already mentioned this. If he slaughters the animal in any way, it has to be completely dead. That means it can't be quivering, it can't be shaking, it can't be convulsing anymore at all. It has to be completely dead. Okay? And I already mentioned that this prohibition only applies to land mammals. Okay? Because the life is in the blood. It occurs to land animals. Okay? Not to what's called sharets. There are a number of animals in Leviticus called sharets. Okay? They're not all understood what they are. But here are some creatures that you can actually eat of the limbs while they're alive, because it's only land animals. Insects can be eaten, parts of them, while they're still alive. Okay? Yeah. Right? Yes, we're talking about Bnei Noach, because Bnei Noach does not have a commandment of kashrus. Okay? So a Bnei Noach could eat a live insect, like a giant grasshopper. He can break off the leg and while it's still alive and still and start chewing on it, okay? All right? Now, of the smallest, actually, mammal that it would be permitted would be the house mouse, but he'd have to be swallowed whole. He would be permitted as long as he doesn't call tar b'achaim. He could swallow a mouse whole. Some argue that. We talked about a frog. Yeah, a frog is a shars. Yeah, you can eat. No, a frog you could eat. It's limb while it's still alive, but it's bar tzalechaim. But it's bar tzalechaim.
The same like the example we were given, the frogs, right?
Yeah, the crabs. Yeah. So while
They
the
regenerate too.
frog legs do.
No.
Oh no, the crabs, the claws, right? So what I'm saying is if they did do this, they would be transgressing tzar balechayim, but not aver minachai. If they ate, just grabbed it, pulled off a frog leg, okay? While it's still alive, it's causing a lot of pain to the animal. Fish, you could take a fish and just start noshing on it, okay? Dolphins and whales, believe it or not, even though they're mammals, they're not land mammals, they do not fall under the prohibition of aver minachai. You could catch, I don't know who would, a dolphin, and cut off a fin and start eating it while the dolphin's still alive. You would not be transgressing aver minachai. Now, of course, you would be transgressing tzar balechayim, right? Causing pain to an animal. Okay. So, aver minachai only applies to a whole limb. So, in other words, if a b'nai Noach were to cut off just the foreleg of an animal and start eating it, he would be chayav of tzar balechayim, causing him pain, but he would not be chayav of the death penalty. The foreleg, if he just cut off like from the knee down, of a cow or a sheep, right? Okay. If he cuts it off from the knee down, he would not be put to death for that and started eating while he's still alive, or even if he cooked it while it's still alive. He would not be chayav misa. He would not be obligated to receive the death penalty. That is not considered aver minachai because it's mostly it's.
In the animal more than.
Well, the rabbis say the reason is it's mostly sinew and bone. Bone is not food. Bone is not considered food, and sinew is not considered food. Okay, even if you ground up the bone and made it into a powder and put it in soup, it's not considered food. You would not be chayav for that. Chayav misa. Now it is. Tsar balechayim.
But the blood would still flow to that, would still be in that limb, in that part of the limb, which would be the blood.
Yes, it's pain. That's what you have to say, right? It's pain, but it's not causing you the biggest.
Right, and the goyim don't have the issur of not eating blood.
That's right. Thank you.
Yeah.
So they have to have the whole limb. So in other words, it has to go up like to the shoulder. If they cut up to the shoulder, then they would be guilty of the death penalty, okay? But if they just take a forelimb, it's tzar balechayim. They're causing pain to an animal. Now, if a Jew, let's just talk about a Jew. If a Jew were to do that, it's not aver minachai. This is called treifa, torn, okay? Like as if the animal was treif, okay? It's not up to the level of aver minachai, but for a Jew, it would be transgressing treifa, okay? So I want to. Treif means if you treif out your plate, or it means torn. Yeah, it's not kosher. It's not kosher. That foreleg would not be kosher for a Jew. Okay, it's not kosher. It's treifa. Okay, it's like a Jew stumbling upon a dead animal and thinking he can eat it. He can't. That's treif.
Right, roadkill.
Or like a lung in a cow. You know how we talk about nodules or gross on the lungs in the cow makes it not kosher? That animal is said to be treif because its limb, one of its limbs is diseased. It's torn. It's treif. It's not healthy. Okay? Yeah. Okay, so now I had a question for Rabbi Faizakov. I had a big kasha.
Wow.
My big kasha was this, because there's a difference between the siman, the sign of when an animal is dead for a Jew, and when an animal is dead for a b'nai Noach. A b'nai Noach, like I said, has to wait until the animal is completely still, has to be dead.
Right.
Well, the definition of dead for them is it has to be, there's no more blood coming out of it, it's just stopped, it's not quivering anymore, it's not thrashing anymore, it's not in its death throes anymore. For a Jew, according to the rabbinical, the Shulchan Aruch, there are two signs that have to be met for the animal to be considered dead and kosher, a kosher shechita, to shech the animal. The knife has to cut through the esophagus and the windpipe. That's it. It doesn't have to cut into the vein or the artery on either side. And what happens is, if only 2 siman are cut, of course, the animal, the heart is still pumping, the blood is still going to the brain, and the animal will still be moving its eyes, moving its tongue, quivering. It still might be shaking. It's not what we would think is dead, but halachically it is dead. And according to Jewish law, it can begin to be dismembered and skinned at that point. Now the first, So I said, that was my kasha. I said, Rabbi Fazakov, this is the halacha. Does anybody do this? He said, no one does this. No one does this.
Okay. You're talking about guys that are so fearful to Hashem that when they, the knife has to be supervised and the whole thing.
Yeah, the knife has to be perfectly smooth, not a nick. Now, the reason Rabbi Fazakov says I cut through every siman, that means he cuts through the esophagus, through the windpipe, and through both arteries and both veins. He says because in the Talmud there are 2 opinions. One is the opinion that's lemaisa, what we do, only 2 simans are required. And the other is Rabbi Yehuda Nasi says, no, you got to cut through all of them. That means you have to cut all the way almost to the neck, to the bone. What happens when you cut the arteries? It bleeds out immediately. The blood comes out of the brain. The animal's dead in 10 seconds or less. Like that. There's no more blood to the brain. And for one thing, there's no pain. He goes out, the blood comes out of the brain, he's out. I know for a fact, because I studied and trained in martial arts, okay? I don't know from doing it to somebody, but if you only cut off the blood supply to the brain by putting the esophagus like in the space of the elbow and put pressure on each side, you will be unconscious between 10 and 30 seconds. And I know from experience that I was out in very fast. My Sifu, I said, go ahead, Sifu, do it. And my Sifu, my teacher, he put the choke on, everything went gray, black, and then the next thing I know, I'm waking up. So if you were to cut those veins, those arteries, there's no pain. No pain at all. Even if they were to start to cut on the animal at that moment, there's no pain because the brain is completely unconscious or dead.
Computer is unplugged.
It's unplugged. Yeah. It's completely unplugged. When that blood comes out.
Even
okay?
though you feel the...
Yeah, but still what they do, okay, so like it's quivering and it's trembling, still they won't start doing anything while it's still quivering or trembling. They wait. They wait for it to be still. Okay? Baruch Hashem. Yeah. Because I had told people, I had said, not told people, I recant. I had said that if a B'nai Noach or anyone wanted to eat and not be over this avera of Aver Min Hachai, they should eat kosher meat because, of course, we're not going to be violating Aver Min Hachai. The animal won't be alive because I used to give the example like they would punch it in the head with a pin and they would start to, because the machines do most of the work, and then they start to skin it immediately and it's still, still alive, heart's still beating. And so I was here saying, no, you should make sure you get kosher. And then when I heard the halacha, I was like, uh-oh. It would be, it's the mitzvah of the B'nai Noach seems to be more pure, more right than the mitzvah of the Jew with only 2 simons. To the eyes, right, but it's not. To the naked eye, right, of course. That's why I say it just appears to be. But we know that the rabbis cut all the way through all the simonim, all the way to the bone.
Michael Shapiro said something incredible like 2 or 3 months ago, that Hashem, the kosher animal had in their neck, the brain connection and the blood connection. So you can do it kosher. A pig has in a different location the brain connection, so you cannot kill a pig and said it was done in the right way, because you will never do both things at the same time. That means that the pig, even though doing the kosher, would be in pain.
It would be in pain and still alive, right? So I'm glad you bring that up. Because Rabbi Faizakov went on to say that even though if we only do 2 siman, and the eyes are still rolling or whatever, he says, normally if you poke someone in the eye, they're going to blink or they're going to pull away. He says, even if we only cut through 2 simonim, and they're rolling their eyes or whatever, and you poke their open eye, they don't respond at all. Mm-hmm. So like you said, this pain threshold, this connection to the esophagus and to the windpipe does something to separate the brain connection. Okay?
He went to say that if a dog or an animal gets scared that is even more pain than what a kosher animal goes when he's put to death, like meaning no pain.
No pain, because right,
No pain.
right.
And the study was done by a non-Jewish person.
Now I'm gonna have to shake your world up a little bit. Okay, all right. So in America, they strive very, very hard not to be over tsar balechayim, to give pain to the animal. Okay, now it's kind of unavoidable, but like you said, kosher slaughter, they feel no pain because they cut that membrane. Now, in South America, Rabbi Faizochov told me the way they do it, and he says he doesn't approve, and most rabbis don't approve, but the way they do it over there is they'll tie a rope around one leg of the animal, hoist it up over like rafters or whatever it is, hoist it up, pull it up, and then while it's hanging from one leg, right, in pain, while it's in pain, they'll shecht it. Now, Rabbi Fazachov says that he's gotten some meat from these places, and he says that he'll find what's called a blood spot. Blood spot. Because they're in pain, there's different contractions of the muscles and et cetera and so forth. He said his wife one time cut into a roast of a shoulder or something and found of the whole, he says we could only eat 30% of it because of the damage that was done, because of the way they shechted this animal.
I thought the whole thing was free.
No, it was kosher kill. It's just because it caused it pain, they couldn't eat that part of the meat. And that's for a Jew.
That's just to avoid the part. Then what you're saying that he did is just to cut the part that has the blood.
Out. They didn't eat it because it's treif, because it had the blood in it.
I heard of machines that grab the cow and turn it upside down.
That's exactly what Rabbi Fazakov does. That's exactly what he does. The machine gives it and just turns him upside down, and then something kind of, I'll say gently, pulls the head open. Right, but the cow's not in any pain. It might be uncomfortable. It might be a little scared, like what's going on.
That's to hang it from a tree. What's the difference? Hanging it from a tree.
From one limb?
From one limb. Now, there's a rope tied around its ankle, and it's hanging from one limb. This thing kind of puts pressure all over the whole, like, torso. It's like being in a harness.
Right.
It's comfortable. It's like in a harness.
Right, but he's not making the pressure. He's just being rolled.
Yeah, because the pressure is distributed over the whole part of his body, it's not causing him pain. Could you imagine how much pain it would be to be lifted up by a rope? That'd be horrible. So that's Tsar Balechayim for sure. Okay. So, what constitutes, we've kind of gone through this, what constitutes a prohibition and what is just forbidden. Okay, so eating while the animal is alive, a limb, it has to be a limb, okay? It can't be like what we call bone and sinew, just like a foreleg. It has to be a full limb. The B'nai Noach would be Chayav Misa. He would be judged to be put to death for that, okay? If they sever a limb but don't eat it, they're not Chayav Misa. They will not be put to death for severing a limb from a live animal. And if they don't eat from it, they're not over the mitzvah. They're not over the aveira of Aver Min Hachai.
So it's just one, putting the pain in the animal.
Right.
It's just the lighter one.
That is Tsar Balechayim. It's definitely causing them pain, and maybe get lashes or something like that. I am not clear on that. Okay. The next thing we have to understand is birds. Okay, there's machloches. Rashi says that if a bird can be eaten in one gulp, they're not over Aver Min Hachai. Rashi says they can't, but although other rabbis say that they can take a bird, eat it in one shot. Okay. Now, skin is not considered meat. Okay, so if B'nai Noach were to skin an animal and eat it, or take a part of the skin of the animal and fry it up, and the rabbis even say, and season it up, they're not Aver Min Hachai. They're not over Aver Min Hachai because skin is not considered a limb. Okay, so in other words, I know.
An example
I-
would be what you
Eating shoe leather.
No, I mean, look, what do non-Jews love to eat, especially, I'm saying Mexico because I'm so used to my wife. They love to eat the
Oh, the ears?
ears, right? They deep fry the ears, right, of the swine.
Oh, the swine, I think so.
That's just skin. Take a skin, right?
Okay, I wanted examples
All right.
to understand more
Yeah.
because the skin. I'm thinking, how can they get skin from the leg and then not
Well, they could do it because they had the surgical means to be able to do it.
the ears would be a good example.
Yeah, or just take a slice and pull it out.
That's causing pain.
That's right. So that is where the problem is.
So I
So
don't think the B'nai Noach would be permitted to do.
they are permitted to do that.
I mean,
No, they're not permitted to do that. I'm sorry.
But they wouldn't be
They
liable.
wouldn't get the death penalty if they did it. That's what I mean. They're not permitted to do it because it's Tsar Balei Chaim. They might get lashes for Tsar Balei Chaim, like I said. I'm not sure. I have to verify that. Okay, so skin. Like I said, there's one rabbi says,
But a Ben Noach can continue eating pork, than pig.
yeah, they're a no kosher. They're not high to kashrus. They can eat pigs, they can eat dogs, they can eat whatever they want.
Just kill.
They just have to kill it, and it has to be dead. Right. Okay. So B'nai Noach, they're not
Subject like us.
subject to the halachas of kashrus. That's just the Jewish people. And that's one of the things that makes us kadosh, holy unto Hashem, holy unto Hashem. One of the big things that makes us holy unto Hashem is kashrus. Okay. So one of the rabbis talks about a donkey. He says if you cut the legs off the donkey, just the feet off a donkey, you're not chayav misa. You're not subject to the death penalty. Okay, that's dar balei chaim. That is causing pain to the animal. But what do we know that also the non-Jews like to eat?
The pig's feet.
Pickled pig's feet.
Yeah.
Okay, so we know that could happen. They could say because it's not considered. Okay, it's considered causing pain, but it's not. But remember, from the foreleg down is not considered meat. It's not considered food at all. So they would not be. What is the word I'm looking for? I have chayav misa, but how do you translate chayav? They would not be subject, I guess, subject to the death penalty for that.
Subject,
Yeah, I think you were the one that brought that word up. Appreciate it.
Liable.
Liable. That's even better. They would not be liable to the death penalty. Okay? But it would be tsar balei chaim. They would be bringing pain to an animal. Okay?
I'm imagining, in times when if a family is that poor that has, I just can't imagine that it's that poor that they need to eat and they will cut their feet and eat.
Well, if they're that poor, how would they have an animal to cut the feet off of? Is that what you mean? Or do you mean they're just taking a little bit at a time?
Yeah.
So that's what I was saying. That's what I was saying. Remember, you want to preserve the meat. That would be one reason why you wanted to do
I
it.
think that would be intentionally because
Yeah.
they want to cause the animal pain.
That is one reason we talked about that people would do it, is to cause people pain. They're so cruel.
They're so cruel, they just want to cause it pain.
And remember, we said that cruelty is what led to man killing man. If you're willing to kill an animal, then you're willing to kill a human being, because remember we talked about the nefesh? The nefesh of the people at the time of the Mabul was only nefesh bahamit, all right? And remember we said that derives its vitality from the same place as the animals does, the three evil klipa. So killing an animal or killing a human being for them is no different than killing an animal, because you're only killing the animal soul at that point, you see? The nefesh bahamis. All right, so this is an introduction under Aver Min Hachai. These are the main points that we have covered. There are other details, like we talked about whales they wouldn't be guilty. We talked about dolphins, they wouldn't be guilty. Crabs, they wouldn't be guilty, right? It has to be a mammal that is on the land. That's why I think a seal and a sea lion, all right, because they're kind of like on the land and off the land. Okay, let me actually look it up for sure.
Right, because those are mammals, they'd be there.
It depends with the
But that's
weather.
not the criteria.
Yeah, can you imagine? I mean, I don't think a human being would do that. You know, I don't see why someone would begin eating a whale while it's still alive. It makes no sense at all. Yeah, we talked about Aver Min Chai does not apply to swallowing a whole living bird. Rambam on Laws of Forbidden Foods.
Well,
Okay? Frogs and snakes, not in the provision of Aver Min Chai. So if someone could pick up a snake and start, I shouldn't say someone. So you have to be clear. We have to be very concise. A B'nai Noach could pick up a snake and start eating it and not be guilty to the death penalty. It doesn't mean he should do it, because it would be Tzar Balei Chaim, right? Okay? He would not be guilty of the death penalty. That's what we mean, Aver Min Chai. The big thing is he or is he not liable to the death penalty for that specific act? Frogs and snakes do not fall into the category where they would be liable to the death penalty. Okay? Let me see. There was something here. Oh, prohibition of flesh from a living animal does not apply to arthropods, shrimp, lobsters, insects. We talked about reptiles, snakes, and lizards, amphibians, mollusks, squids, octopus. Anything that is not a mammal that walks on the earth, they would not be liable to the death penalty if they ate a limb from a living animal, from one of those living animals. They're called sherets.
But these crabs,
Yeah.
do they feel pain? I mean, how do we measure?
Oh, yeah.
How can we measure? How
Oh,
do we
when
know?
you take a blue coral crab and put it in boiling water, you can actually hear it screaming.
Screaming. Yeah.
It's alive.
Because if they regrow it, you'd think it'd be like, I don't know.
No, it causes pain. It causes pain. Yeah, it's in a terrible amount of pain. You cut off someone's wrist, chas v'sholem, it's the same thing.
You're comparing it to hair, right? When we cut our hair,
I was
it's
just
the same.
thinking that
Oh,
if
right,
they were
right.
made,
Nails.
if they were made, it was different.
So they have their skeleton on the outside, where we have our skeleton on the inside, but inside is the muscle and the nerves and the sinews, and if you cut that, it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt pretty bad. So it's Tsar Balei Chaim. Oh, so the term sharets is the 8 creatures designated as such in Vayikra. Vayikra 11:29 through 30. Okay, so that's a reference for you. Basically, the other things that could be covered, this was getting just an overview of the main things that would make someone chayav misa. That's the most important thing to cover when we're talking about this, okay? We covered parts of the animal. For example, the foreleg, they would not be chayav misa, all right? We talked about eating the animal after its death, right? It's, okay? So there are other things. We talked about kosher shechting, where they have the 2 siman, but hardly anybody only does that. They go through all the arteries and the veins. Okay? And there are other things like broken and maimed limbs, et cetera, and so forth, but those don't apply to this main point of what would make someone an B'nai Noach chayav misa for Aver Min Chai. So the takeaway from this, okay, again, is if someone is willing to be cruel to an animal, okay, remember the generation, the Dor HaMabel, generation of the Mabel.
Yeah.
If they're willing to be cruel to an animal, work their way up to killing an animal, it's not a far step from stealing from a human being
No, it's the opposite.
or killing a human being. That is why, like you said, Rachi, that Hashem had to put a stop to this. So at the end of the Mabel, for Noach, he brought the mitzvah, the prohibition of Aver Min Chai, which they did not have in the generations of the Dor HaMabel, in the first generation. So Hashem brought it and he said, look, Tsar Balei Chaim, it's got to stop. You've got to be sensitive. You've got to be kind to animals. As a matter of fact, a Jew cannot even kill a bug except a spider unless there is a specific reason for it. We cannot break a branch unless there is a purpose for it. Being destructive is a complete isser for a Jew because everything has to have a reason and an importance. Okay?
But sometimes bugs are creepy.
Okay, so...
Do you get punishment for that?
No. That's a difference. Remember, it's like of a wasp. Oh, there's one thing I found out though. If you are causing like a wasp, like we have those traps That is an isser, I found out, because you just stick to them and the wasps are kind of like there and they just die slowly. That would be forbidden. Whereas like flies in a zapper, that's a problem because if something big comes along and flies into it and it doesn't kill them all the way, you're tsar balei chayim. You would be causing pain unnecessarily. But a fly, a mosquito, zap, zap, zap. But that was no problem. But there is a problem there. So we have to be careful and we have to really look into some of these things and that I did not know about before.
And
So,
have you found out about the zapper in there?
yes,
Really?
yes.
I feel so bad
Here.
about those wasps.
I highly encourage everyone to get it if even,
Yeah.
if you want to know the mitzvahs of B'nai Noach, and it talks also about, it compares and contrasts Jewish, but we should be learning these mitzvahs ourselves.
Right.
what are our mitzvahs, right? So thank you very much. It should be that we are kind to animals, that we raise up inside ourselves a kindness for all human beings, because remember, be kind, rewind, right? The only way we're going to be sensitive to the needs of a human being, to bring them up to B'nai Noach, is we can't look at them as animals. They're not goyim. They're not goyim, okay? They are human beings that they will not have olam haba or a portion in the world to come unless they become B'nai Noach. And there are certain gray areas concerning that, the rabbis say, but the rabbis are very clear. If a person comes through the Jewish people and believes that the Jewish people received the Torah at Har Sinai and believed that God spoke to Moshe and gave the SHEVA mitzvahs Noach in the Torah, then they are called Hasid of the nations. They are called B'nai Noach. But that is how they get there. They can't get there by just somehow saying, oh, I don't like the Jews at all. I really don't. But this is pretty wise. One God, it's okay. No, sorry. Doesn't cut it. You have no spiritual connection to God.
What we're hearing now, that Kabbalah is for everybody. It's not
Well-
only yourself, guys. In the charts, it's very common to say, don't tell me that that's only for you. You see people that are studying Kabbalah, open Kabbalah, and they think that they can go there and just take it without going through the Jewish people.
Kabbalah is a strange animal when you're talking about pure Kabbalah, okay? Because the rabbis say that why is it that Kabbalah is mostly, and the Zohar is always talking about Jews, Jewish people? Why is it? Because it was Jews that put it down, put it together.
Yes,
And the rabbis say that at the time of the codifying of these things, they didn't have a broad audience. They had a very narrow audience which only consisted of the Jewish people. However, Kabbalah does apply to non-Jews as well. A non-Jew can learn Kabbalah, for pleasure and for knowledge. As a matter of fact, I have a sefer called Kabbalah of the Meditations for the Nations. Kabbalah by Rabbi Yitzchak Ginsburg. Rabbi Yitzchak Ginsburg, it's so important to know these things, because if you don't know, you can be confused.
Kabbalah is the soul of the Torah. If Kabbalah is the soul of the Torah, it's just the Torah. They can't go directly to Kabbalah. They need to be taught with
Okay.
a Jewish person.
Now,
and it
please,
needs to
don't
be-
mistake Zohar for Kabbalah, for one thing. It says that no one can study Zohar until they're 40 years old, right? They shouldn't study, or is it Kabbalah?
It's the same thing. It's
No, it's not.
the Kabbalah.
There is Kabbalah in the Zohar, but the Zohar is not Kabbalah. Okay? So we have to clarify that, and that's what I'll do for next week. I'll try to clarify what non-Jews can do as far as studying Kabbalah. But I know for a fact that a non-Jew, a B'nai Noach, can study whatever Torah he wants as long as it is for pleasure or for knowledge. He cannot do it lishma, for its own sake. The only mitzvahs he could study for his own sake are the SHEVA mitzvahs B'nai Noach, Shambin, okay, and their extensions and the things that branch out from them. Okay, remember I told you about the servant of Rabbi Gamliel Tovi. Remember I told you, you don't remember the servant? So Rabbi Gamliel had a servant. His name was Tovi, and Tovi died. And Rabbi Gamliel gave him covet. He mourned him. He received consolation at the grave of Tovi. And his students said, Rabbi, did you not teach us that we're not supposed to receive consolation at the death of a slave? And Rabbi Gamliel said, no, Tovi was different than any other slave. Tovi was very special. And that's all it says, Rabbi, in the Mishnah. The Mefarshim come along and say, what was so special about Tovi? It says that Tovi was so special, okay? He was obviously B'nai Noach, okay? But servants in a house of a Jew, they have to go through, they have to be circumcised, they have other things, but they're not considered Jews. They're still considered B'nai Noach. But he said Tovi was so special that he would have been considered a Talmud Chacham. He knew so much Torah that he would have been a Ben Torah. He would have been, if he would have been a Jew, he would have been a Talmud Chacham. So much so, the Mefarshim say, that if he were a Jew, he would have received Smicha.
Wow.
He would have been ordained as a... Now, we're talking in the times of the Tanaim. Rabbi Gamliel, I believe Rabbi, was Rabbi Gamliel a Tanai?
Rabbi Gamliel was one of the Tanaim for the Mishnah, yes.
He was the Tanai. So we're talking about the days of the Tanaim, and you know how hard it was to get Smicha at the days of the Tanaim? Who was it that didn't get Smicha? He was a huge gadol. He could get Smicha. But here's this Tovi, that if he would have been a Jew, he would have gotten Smicha. So what I'm saying is that he studied all of Torah. Now, remember, Rabbi Pinson on his book of reincarnation says, and this blows your mind. He says that the non-Jewish soul and the Jewish soul both have 613 compartments that have to be filled, have to be rectified.
Wow.
Yes. Now, how does the non-Jew do it? For tefillin, the mitzvah of tefillin, how does he do it? He certainly doesn't put on tefillin.
Right.
He has to, what is the mitzvah of tefillin? It's binding, it's subjecting your mind and your heart to Hashem. You're cleaving to God. So how does the non-Jew, the B'nai Noach, fulfill this mitzvah? He does it in a purely spiritual sense. That's how he can fulfill that mitzvah. So, if the non-Jew has 613 compartments in his soul, and there has to be, I'm talking about B'nai Noach. If a B'nai Noach has 1,600 mitzvahs, they have to be able to learn that part of the Torah. Now, that part of Torah for tefillin, they can't do it lishma, because it's not one of their specific mitzvahs. They can do it for knowledge and for pleasure, like we said. They can't do it lishma.
My point was not that, no, because we did it. I mean, we studied Torah, we were not Jewish, when we were converting. My point is that these people making this comment, they go directly, we can get it by ourselves.
They're saying they're bypassing the Jewish people, and they're saying we can just get it and we don't need you at all. That's a different story.
You think?
What does Rabbi think?
Rabbi Google.
On one foot, Rabbi. On one foot, Rabbi.
It's a problem. I was at a SHEVA Kadisha conference a few years ago, and the host community actually invited basically a Muslim Tahara team to demonstrate on a mannequin how they prepare members of their community for burial. And the whole point was to highlight the similarities and what are the essential truths about Kabbalah Hamet and these other things. So at one point somebody raised their hand, they're like, yeah, but it sounds like you guys all play by the same rules. We have 29 communities represented with our SHEVA Kadisha here, and we have 30 different opinions about how to do a Tahara. You guys seem to be speaking more authoritatively. He says, well, it used to be that way, but now we have a problem with move to Google. He says, now Muslims don't call the imam and ask him questions. They don't ask shilas anymore in Islam. They get on the internet. Who holds that I'm allowed to get away with this? Great, that's my new favorite authority, right? So we have the same issue. We have people who try to learn, people inside and outside, who try to learn Torah from Google.
Right.
Move to Google.
Right. Because there's so much information, available.
Right. Way more than you could get for 45 minutes on a Sunday most weeks.
Right.
I can do this whenever I want, at my speed, at my level of intellect.
Right.
I can get Ashkenazi and Sephardi and Hasidic and Litvish. I can get all these opinions. That's all at my fingertips. I have access to it all. And Talmud Torah is a very complex thing, and it takes that teacher-student relationship. And Torah is not a la carte. You can't learn Torah from Amazon, the latest Amazon grocery, enterprise.
Right.
So someday you said something that stick very, very. You said in order to follow a teacher or to believe a teacher, you learn that you have to be sitting with him for a couple of years, something like that, right?
40 years.
At least 40 years.
Until transfer of knowledge has occurred.
right? So you can.
40.
Yeah,
That's
so
why
you
we
can.
spent 40 in the Midbar with Moshe Rabbeinu.
Right.
Because we would not have been able to keep the Torah in the, we could not have been balabatim inside our land and live according to the Torah without going to yeshiva first.
40.
And our yeshiva
Was 40 years in the
Moshe Rabbeinu.
wilderness.
So you cannot come to a
And
teacher
then
and say you're
the
not doing
transfer
your
of
chores.
knowledge was so
You have to
complete
wait.
that we could live successfully and raise Jewish children in Israel
And it would stick.
without Moshe Rabbeinu.
Right,
The transmission had occurred.
right,
Wow.
right.
Yeah, that's.
That was
How is
just-
it that our Rebbe wasn't there once we set up our households? There was nobody asked Shilas. Where was Moshe Rabbeinu? Nida Shilas, Chinuch Shilas, which Shulchan I daven in, this SHEVA burns an incense I don't like, they don't tune their instruments right, whatever. Who was the referee? Who was the Rav for Klal Yisrael? So Yeshua and other, but that relationship had to be.
It has to be there. And that's why I think the Rambam is he's so sharp that in order for a non-Jew to become B'nai Noach, he has to believe that the Jewish people received the Torah at Har Sinai, and that Moshe spoke to God, and we all heard the voice of God, and that those mitzvahs come through the Torah. It's very important that you're not saying it comes from Bereshis. It come through the complete Torah of Moshe. And if they come through this, I call it the Amat Amet, this path of truth, if they come through this path, then they can be considered, they can stand in front of a court. In order to become B'nai Noach, you have to stand in front of a court of 3 dayanim, okay? And I guess we'd give them a certificate or something. I don't know, but it has to be official. And they have to come through the Jewish people. Otherwise, they don't have a spiritual connection to Hashem.
The obligations that became incumbent on those, let's call them non-Jews, at the time of Noach really can only be understood through the Torah, just like the rest of Torah. Just like
Right.
That's what we
Just
do.
like all of the 613 mitzvot, or
Right.
1226 mitzvot, whatever there are, that they can only be learned by the Torah. And
Yeah.
that now our tradition from Moshe Rabbeinu is Yoshua and the Zekanim,
Right.
and Anshe Knesset Gedela, and
Right.
the Mishnah, and the Gemara,
Right.
and
Right.
our rabbis now.
Right.
But that rabbinic tradition is essential to being able to fulfill any mitzvah, including Noachide mitzvahs.
Otherwise, the Rambam says, otherwise, they're not even called a wise man. They have no spiritual connection unless they do it this way. They have to, in order to have a spiritual connection to God, they have to come through this. Yeah.
So that was.
As a matter of fact, he says that in order to get Olam Abba and a portion in the world to come, they have to come to this level of B'nai Noach. And I know there's some gray areas in that, but
What we were just discussing in our home this week, Parshas Kaisar, Torah, the Psukim say us that Abraham sent his children with Torah to the east of gifts. And that's been understood traditionally to be like Eastern wisdom, etc. Oftentimes manifested in Eastern healing traditions, Eastern medicine,
Right.
capital M, lower M, however you want to understand it. And that those are in fact gifts that they received, wisdoms that they received by virtue of being children of Abraham, but they did not merit to the promise of nationhood like Ishmael and Yitzchak had. So that we're talking about that, and then we're talking about, martial arts is another area where there's this crossover, this idea between
I know.
nutrition, exercise,
Yeah.
wellness stuff,
Right.
and Eastern wisdom around that is irrefutable. It's clear these people have a solid system, and how do we navigate that, keeping in mind a Torah tradition and acknowledging that they are outside of that tradition. That as wise as they sound, as soon as they get spiritual, we have to be aware, because it's not our spirituality.
No.
It's not
Wow.
the
It's
one
not
truth.
wisdom.
Wow, wow.
So there's that fine line where go to a Chinese doctor, but don't let him speak Ruchnias with you.
Exactly.
That kind of a
Wow.
fine line.
exactly, you cannot learn wisdom.
Massage and acupressure, all these
Yeah.
things, there's a lot of.
They will do great on you, but you cannot, yeah.
You can't learn wisdom
Right.
from them.
And so, and why? Because Abraham
healing.
said explicitly, I'm sending them to the east where they won't be an influence
Right.
on Yitzchak.
Right,
Yishmael was not kicked out to the east. In fact, Yishmael and Yisrael grew up together in the end, right?
yeah,
But the east has out until the 50s, 60s, 70s, the east was always in the east. They weren't empirical. They weren't like Islam trying to conquer the world. And their wisdom was there and very strong
yeah,
and old, at least as old as what we call Judaism, probably older, more like Abraham's time. But
And they're called gifts, tome.
Yeah, just this idea that they are legitimate gifts, but they're limited gifts.
Yeah. They cannot convert to tahara. They cannot be made pure.
Right, and to your point, that until the Ben Noach, Bat Noach acknowledges the centrality and primacy of the Torah,
Right.
that they can't speak Torah, because then they're fools. Then they're speaking out of some other side of their body.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. Not even considered wise.
Right.
We learn for the refuah
It's
of
Robert Sami Sandler, and the Jewish name is Shmuel Mordechai ben
Shmuel
Rivka.
Mordechai ben Rivka.
I'm going to put
Shmuel Mordechai ben Rivka. And everyone that we mentioned, and everyone who
Amen.
is before Shalem.